Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is. Anthony Fantano, After Dark. It's the new segment on this channel where I shoot these videos after dark. Here's a headline that hit me today that got me a little, tiffed, blood boiling. In response to this headline, James Murphy basically said LCD Soundsystem split up for ticket sales. Is James Murphy and LCD Soundsystem some terrible, greedy, awful garbage band that's just bleeding their fans dry for money? Maybe. Let's look. Down in this article, there's kind of one major, actually I'll say minor quote that they lift from the New York Times article to sort of justify the existence of this whole article. And that's essentially James Murphy saying, my theory was if I make it our last show, the Madison Square Garden show, we'll sell it out in 2 weeks. It wasn't a total lark. It was a bit larky, but I like making decisions. I find it easy. Now, here's the thing that's sort of a little misleading about sort of using that quote as proof that the band split up for ticket sales. Number one, from what I understand and what many other people understand is that prior to this whole Madison Square Garden thing, a show that had been sort of booked in advance, months in advance, James Murphy had essentially already decided he was going to have the band be kaput. Like he was going to finish the band. The band was going to be over. And it seems like there was kind of a conscious decision to make that show the final show in order to get up ticket sales numbers at that particular show. Now, I'm not going to say that that's, completely on the up and up. Obviously, there is a bit of showmanship and manipulation there, as there certainly was throughout that whole, ending cycle of the band LCD Soundsystem, not just because of that final Madison Square Garden show, but the live album that was released, all the artists they had arrive and perform with them at that show, the movie that they dropped, Shut Up and Play the Hits. It was very, very, very much of an overstatement. The whole process of sort of ending the band. James Murphy really made it a big deal. He made it a big thing. He really made sure that he had his final hurrah before he would just kind of reconvene the band less than a decade later. Which I personally, still do have my reservations about, not only because I feel like the new material has been really sort of mediocre, but also because the fashion in which he ended the band, it seemed so final, it seemed so grand that, goddamn, how could you bring the band back in less than 10 years? Obviously, there's always room for a comeback, and the internet does speed things up a little bit. I get it, I understand. But still, just like 6-7 years down the line, 5 years down the line, where the band's coming back, okay, doesn't make sense, but okay. I'll continue. I digress a little bit here. There's also kind of a statement here that's lifted talking about how James bringing the band back, he sort of saw that as a challenge, though I don't really see that as damning. Deeper in the New York Times article, there is a moment where Nancy Wang, talks about the band getting back together, saying that it would be, crass to say that it's just about the money, but it would be insincere, to sort of say that money wasn't sort of a deciding factor or a factor in reasoning, that we should get the band back together because we could, sort of make a buck off of this. We could get back and make more money as a band. And honestly, I don't necessarily see anything inherently wrong with musicians making money. I myself think capitalism in the music industry is fine. I don't think it's a terrible thing. But what sort of gets me about James deciding to kind of tear the band apart was kind of his self-awareness about where the band was going. And I feel like it's kind of a bit of an illogical and a bit of a silly brand of self-awareness that the band was getting so big that, of course, like many other great bands before LCD Soundsystem, they would start dropping their most mediocre material, their worst material. However, I don't understand why James, as obsessed as he is with rock and pop history, and I feel like that is part of what makes LCD Soundsystem great, because he has so many amazing reference points in his music. He has such a sharp and a defined idea of what he wants his music to be, because he has so much music knowledge at his disposal. And on top of that, I feel like his knowledge comes out so brightly in his lyrics a lot of the time, in a very kind of smart and very observant way, that actually makes someone who's kind of a fellow music nerd myself really excited. However, I don't see why he wouldn't sort of understand and accept this whole cliche of the band gets big and they start putting out their worst stuff as really what it is. It's a cliche. And a lot of artists and a lot of bands are sort of moving past that cliche in the internet age. Why couldn't you guys? And with the self-awareness of that, why couldn't you guys continue to come out with music that is relevant to you, is important to you? I mean, from what I understand, you guys are fully in control of your own creative process. I haven't read anything that says otherwise. So why exactly would you guys become this shell of a band who you once were if you can continue dropping the music that you want to drop? I feel like that's actually kind of what LCD Soundsystem ironically is becoming now, with this new handful of tracks that really pale in comparison to their previous material so greatly. It seems like James tried to sidestep this bullet that was coming out the band, only to sort of step back in the direction of, I guess, sort of the trajectory of the bullet, just because he wanted to get the band back together. I mean, I sort of accept and I understand that maybe for him personally, this seems like a bit of a challenge here, but I don't really feel like the material released thus far is worthy of this reunion. I don't really feel like the material thus far is bringing all that much excitement to my ears. And Al Doyle of Hot Chip and New Build and obviously LCD Soundsystem sort of, put up a long thread over here talking about the New York Times article talking about the band getting back together. Sort of talking about the article playing the angle a little hard to sort of portray James as a money grubber. And, I do get that. I do understand that. And he's sort of putting a bit of a human face on it, talking about the band and, for many other people in the group as well, being their job. And now that the band is back together, they have their job again. And, that's certainly not a bad thing. However, I do think he does make a good point talking about the whole ticket sales situation of the Madison Square Garden show. He claims that the band lost money on that show, which, given the production value, given all the artists that showed up, maybe could potentially be the case. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to say whether or not that's 100% true until I see the numbers. Not that I just want to distrust Al just to distrust him. It's nothing personal. It's really kind of just about, wanting to see the numbers before I sort of believe that just on face value. However, even if the band did make money on that Madison Square Garden show by making that show their last show, to me, if that was going to be their farewell tour, they would have sold that show out anyway. Maybe not in seconds, but that show would have sold out anyway if that was going to be their farewell tour. So whether or not it was the last show, whether or not they had 3 more shows after that is really kind of irrelevant. That show would have sold out if it was the farewell tour regardless. So even James' motivations there don't completely make sense. And also, even if the band did make money off of the show, it's just very short-term gain there. Obviously the band is going to make more money down the road if they continue and play more live shows and drop more music and don't break up. However, it does kind of seem like a cash grab more and more and more, the more that we see the band sort of continue almost as if, uninterrupted in a sense, rather. I do get that, James has sort of come forward and addressed the elephant in the room, that it is a little weird and it is a little awkward for the band to end in the way that they did, and for them to just kind of reconvene. Really, I don't know. I feel like the clearest and most obvious and the frankest statement of all of this is, what Nancy said in the New York Times article. You know, obviously it's not all about the money. We care about our art, we care about our music, but money's a motivator. You know, we have bills, we have families, we have things we like to pay for. We need money to survive. We can't just sit here and act like money doesn't make us, it doesn't factor into our decision making process here. You know, it is still kind of worrying though to, you know, again, sort of see the hype and see the passion that the fans really, you know, and me myself, you know, sort of saw come out of this whole event here, you know, and for it to sort of be tarnished with a reunion in such a short amount of time, you know, and I feel like you're going to have people as a result of that sort of sniffing around and looking for any blood in the water that they can find the moment that something like what James said in this interview is said, you know, because with all of these sort of connections being made by the mere fact that it is a really weird thing for the band to end the way that they did, for them to come together so quickly afterwards, you know, I guess I don't get why James wouldn't be a little bit more careful with his tone. Maybe it's because he feels like he doesn't have anything to hide and that, you know, the band's demise was completely on the up and up. But still, to the outsider, even the outside fan, it does seem a little odd, you know, and it is going to raise suspicions. But let me know what you think down in the comments. You know, do you feel like LCD Soundsystem did in fact split up for ticket sales? Or do you feel like this was just kind of a single decision for a single show when the band had already decided that they were going to be up and over and that was it? Or rather, James, you know, decided he was going to finish the band and that was going to be it, based on, you know, sort of this idea in his head, which in my opinion could very much be real because, I mean, let's face it, it's James Murphy. That, you know, the band is bigger now, so that anxiety, we're going to put out our worst stuff now. We're going to be that big band that nobody cares about anymore. Let me know what you think down in the comments. You're the best. Next to my head is another video. Watch that or click on the link to subscribe to the channel. Okay? I'll catch you guys in the next one. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best.